Welcome to Straight Outta Jersey. Today's podcast is brought to you by Ace Sunglasses. Go to acesunglasses.com.au to purchase some of the best shades around. Use promo code MRG30 and receive 30% off selected brands. That's Ace Sunglasses, the shades of true champions. And don't forget to subscribe to Straight Outta Jersey, hosted by... This is Straight Outta Jersey with Jersey Jay-Z. This guest was a made man in the Colombo crime family. His crew was one of the deadliest around during the Colombo Wars. He was the protege of Colombo Captain Greg the Grim Reaper Scarpa. Today, he has changed his life around. He's a trainer, author, and inspiring actor, starring alongside Robert De Niro in The Irishman. Straight Outta Jersey welcomes Larry Mazza.
What's up, guys? We are live, Straight Outta Jersey. I'm Joe Zapata, and I'm honored to have my guest. He's a former Maine member in the Colombo crime family under Greg Scarpa, but now he's a trainer, an author, he's an aspiring actor. He's got everything he's doing. Mr. Larry Mazza. How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing great, and Joe, thanks so much for having me. That intro is off the charts. Starring alongside De Niro, I wouldn't go that far, but I appreciate that. I was his consultant. Being his consultant was very important.
How was Robert De Niro? Let's start there. How was Robert De Niro working with him?
You know what? I really liked him. I enjoyed being with him. He was very humble. He was quiet. He was a sponge. He just kept listening to me, and it helped him. It helped him a lot. There's probably about a dozen things that were changed in the movie or added to it based on what I said. So he really, understood where I was coming from. Outside of politics, he's a great guy. And I'm not, that's his belief. That's up to him. Yep. Whatever he feels is his. But that's where you could run into trouble with some people like that, Yeah. But
you also have Scorsese and Pileggi, Nicholas Pileggi, right?
Nick Pileggi, after I met him, he sent me an address to come to like a few days later. I went to the address. I'm thinking it's a restaurant, a club or something, an office. It's Scorsese's house. In, Central Park, downtown, near Central Park in Manhattan. And while we were there, I met casting directors and obviously Martin Scorsese himself. And then a few days later, I was in Nick Pileggi's house. And him and I became very good friends. I was in his house in Manhattan, also near Central Park. It's a funny story because he lives on the top floor, but his wife made him buy the second floor just for his books in his office. And that's where we sat. And when I walked in the door and he put his hand out to shake my hand, he told me, Larry, you wrote a mob classic. I almost had tears in my eyes to hear the master at that time. Now Terry Winter is right there alongside and maybe surpassed him as the best mob writer ever, which we'll talk about because he wrote my script.
Yeah. Speaking of the book, I'm going to put up the book right now, The Life, which you wrote right there.
Yes.
Great book. Nick said that you wrote a classic, correct? And it was everything about it.
And then Terry Winter later on, after he read it and we started working on a script, he told me it was the best mob story he ever read. It was just amazing. So he's having a ball writing the script. We're hoping to write episodes for a TV series next if it happens. But anyway, then I wound up meeting Nick at his Hollywood Hills mansion.
Wow.
So, and he has a house in the Hamptons. God bless him. You can't beat those properties.
Yeah.
So, So I was and my producer, Joe Paletto, is really a supportive and very giving and good man to have a partner. He's my partner, Wow. So, been blessed with all of that. And
I know Armand Assante is a big fan of yours. Armand Assante, you know him?
Yes, he's a fantastic guy. I have a picture up in my house, him and I together. He happens to be probably my favorite out of all of them because he's gracious and he's giving. He has never, ever not answered me back with good advice.
Wow. He played a great John Gotti. Great John Gotti.
Oh, the best. Yeah, you're not going to beat that. And he wants to be in my show if it happens. He wants to be part of it. So, and I'd love to have him. So.
That would be excellent, him. Speaking of John Gotti, did you know John?
No. I mean, I knew him, of course, but I was only in a room with him once. It was at a funeral, and I couldn't really go over to him. Greg did. I was in the background. We did get to say hello, introduced, said hello, Mr. Gotti, nice to meet you. And that was it. Even my own boss of my family, Junior Persico. That's as close as I got. I went in with Greg once, said, hello, Mr. Persico. He says, call me Carmine. I said, okay, thank you, Mr. Carmine, or whatever I said. And I walked away. I was a kid. But yeah, I mean, now I met the son in a nightclub. And
John Jr.?
Again, even him, we didn't, he was playing the part. And whatever. We never really got, who knows if we would have met in a different circle or a different circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. Now, speaking of the mob, it's very popular. I know everybody involved. You got involved, obviously, with Linda delivering groceries, right? That story. Maybe you can tell my audience sort of how that, you were groomed into becoming Greg Scarpa's right-hand man.
It's funny because Nick Pileggi said I was seduced twice. He says, as a 17, 18-year-old by Linda, who was one of his wives. Later on, I found out he had a few. And ultimately, because we got so close, she wanted him to know about it and allow it. It's a crazy, crazy situation. It's all in the book to get all the detail of that. But eventually he sat me down and we had a discussion, or he explained to me that he knew, and I had to trust him or I was going to be dead either way. So once it came out, it was a load of pressure off of me. And then I got closer to him. In some ways, I think I just made his life easier because he could go with his other wives when he had to, with his girl, he could get around. He was a swashbuckling type of guy. And at least he knew she was home, and not out gallivanting or going to nightclubs, getting bored. So it sort of worked out, but there were true feelings. It lasted almost 10 years. So it's not that it was, a fly-by-night. And along the way, he took a liking to me. He saw that I was smart. I was a school kid. I was loyal. I had all the attributes that they try to pull in. Most people think they want thugs and thieves and swindlers, and they don't. There are enough of them out there that they can use. If you're going to get into the inner circle, they want to know you came from a good family, you have a good upbringing, you can be taught. And that's what everything happened to me. And I got close to him at a very young age, and that's where the second seduction came in. Going out to places with him, seeing everybody fawn all over him, seeing him get free things when I know he had more money to spend than anybody I knew, but he would get, that not even respect. It's beyond that because it's fear. But the way they treated him, and so it was easy to get sucked into it.
Well, when was he known as the Grim Reaper? Because I'm sure he was Greg from 13th Ave, but he became the Grim Reaper. How did that happen?
That's all he was known as, Greg from 13th Avenue.
Yes.
Like you said that, they knew exactly who it was.
Correct.
He really never had a nickname until later on during the war. When the war started, and the Grim Reaper wasn't the first one. His first nickname was Schwarzkopf.
Norman Schwarzkopf.
The famous general. When Carmine came to him for help and to lead us, advise us and be our leader, Greg took it to heart because Carmine was under him for so many years that he took to that nickname. He actually wore a Desert Storm cap during the war. It was funny. Then some guys started calling him Hannibal, the Mad Hatter.
Wow.
But the Grim Reaper came along because at the end, well, not at the end, about halfway through the war when we had these codes on the beepers, he took the code of 666. And when the 666 came in, they said, the Grim Reaper must have struck again. And then we put the second beep in, which was where to meet, and the third beep, what time. So it would be 3 beeps or something like that. Or we'd put 3 numbers in and they knew. Grim Reaper, Sheepshead Bay, 9 o'clock. So, So he got that. And then it stuck. When all the publicity hit and the war and, he went to, he had that big case when he had the AIDS and he had a big case settlement, things like that.
He got AIDS from Paulie Pumps, right? Paulie Pumps gave him AIDS?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And Paulie got it from steroids.
From steroids.
They were sharing them, yeah. Because Paulie,
Mm.
like people right away, back then it was, a gay disease.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really,
Mm-hmm.
that's where it started back in,
Yep.
in that time. It's hard to talk about these things now. People get uptight over it. But it was what it was. And that gave Paulie like a bad reputation. But Paulie had more girls than Brad Pitt. He was a good-looking kid. He had money. He was a gentleman. He was polished, or he liked to think he was. He learned to be polished. As a matter of fact, he's bought me my first expensive glass of wine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know anything about wine. He said, "Oh, try this." And he always had beautiful girls. But we found out later on it was from the needles. So,
mm-hmm. Wow, people don't understand that in this life. It's you're not killing innocent people. It's you break a rule, and something's going to happen, and it's part of you're killing each other. That's what happens. You break a rule. When did you first get into doing something that got a little bit over the edge?
Well, I've said this several times, and the best way to say it is that you're brought along with baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna, everybody says your friend, you're gonna kill your best friend on your first date. That's not likely to happen. Why would somebody put you in that position? There's no reason to. Right. So what Greg did with me was he would ask me to bring him somewhere. Okay, this is just vague, very vague. And I'd hear a gunshot. He'd come out, get in the car, and I knew there were 3 cars behind me following me. So I knew what he did. I mean, I didn't see it. I didn't have to pull a trigger at that point. Before that, he'd ask me to give a guy a flat. I gave a guy a flat tire. The next day in the newspaper, man killed fixing flat. And it's a test. See how I reacted to that. And I just kept my mouth shut. I minded my business like my whole family told me to do my whole life. Just mind your business. Mm-hmm. And I didn't say boo, but I knew the guy I gave the flat to wound up dead. And all the guys were laughing about it in the club, looking at the paper, cocksucker, calling them names. Excuse me, I don't want to curse. And then eventually I would drive a crash car. Or, one of the first ones I was involved in was where his daughter was almost raped.
Yes,
we gave the guy incredibly vicious beating. It took him probably 3 months to recover in a hospital, broken ribs, broken arms, broken legs. I mean, he was dismantled. And it should have stayed at that because it was a good lesson to let him go out and people ask, what the hell happened to you? But he couldn't live with that. So that was one of the first ones I was right on the scene.
Linda, Greg wouldn't let that go. I mean, you guys gave him a beating for almost raping Linda.
Yeah, he couldn't let it go. But I think between him and, I blame Big Linda a little bit, the mother. She was like, it wasn't enough. How could we let him get away with this? He didn't get away with it. And now if he had raped her, it's a different story. Maybe you just put him out of, put him to sleep, put him out of his miseries. Yep. But he was sort of seducing, trying to get her, and I don't know. I wasn't there, but we know she didn't get raped. So it's a matter of opinion. I think the beating was more than enough. And I think at the first, he thought so too. Then I actually watched him shoot a guy in the club first time and shocked all of us. Supposedly the guy called him a rat and he couldn't prove it. And in that life, if somebody calls you a rat, you got the right to kill him. You could. And I said in my book, I've said on some other shows, not everybody would do that. It's not easy just to take a life. And, most guys don't find it that easy. You could give him a beating. You could give him a warning. If you ever talk that way again, there's ways of doing it, but put the gun out, kill him, roll him up in the carpet. And the funny part of that story is I had to go with Bobby Zan to go pick up, get a new rug. And we brought that orange rug. And I didn't say nothing. I was a kid. Bobby picked it out. What am I going to say? They were mad at me. How'd you let him get an orange rug? It doesn't look good in here. That was the talk. We just killed the guy, carried him out, and all we're worried about is the orange rug. And we left it there. But Bobby Zan was colorblind. I didn't know that. So he thought it was more in the Brown family, but it wasn't. It was rusty red, orange. So, but yeah, so they bring, and then later on, there may be a situation where a girl is being abused in a bar down the street, and we go in 2 or 3 times and warn them. Then we give them a beating. And if they keep doing it, but you feel you're doing something good for the community.
Yes.
You're keeping the neighborhood safe. So if they care about you, that's the way they bring you along, where you think you're doing the right thing for the neighborhood. Eventually, it gets to a point where, okay, the guy broke a rule, like you said before.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a certain rule or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he didn't, he disrespected the boss's nephew.
Yeah.
There was one where, Junior Persico's nephew got threatened by a kid that they were having a beef. And the kid said, I'm going to kill you, you risk that. So they put out a hit, the whole family. And it was a hit we did on 86th Street in the middle of the summer. There were cops all over, cops on horses, motorcycles. And we just got out and just did it right there in the middle of the street. But I was a crash car and a backup shooter, because 86th Street, there was 2 crash cars. And then Greg was another car. We had 3 cars there, plus the main shooters. But that was an unbelievable,
You had a problem with Castellano's nephew or something, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's a story that's been coming out a lot lately. I mean, it's in the book. I talked about it a few times. The funny thing is, when it happened, I had no idea who it was. We were in after hours, okay? And as I got older, I started understanding nothing good happens in an after hours. If you didn't have enough to drink by 3 or 4 in the morning, you got to go somewhere at 5 and stay there till 6. Everybody's bombed. So it was over a girl, and we took it outside. I was there with Mario, who's one of our guys, Kevin, who was one of our guys at the time,
Jimmy,
Big Billy.
Jimmy there?
I don't think Jimmy was there that night, believe it or not.
Oh,
yeah, because he was engaged maybe at that time. He got close to getting married in the early 20s, his early 20s. So he wasn't there. He missed some of those nights, not all of them. But anyway, there's about 5 or 6 of us there. So we went outside, and I was in really good fighting shape at the time, because
you still are in great shape, by the way.
Thank you. I was in martial arts, and I hate to. I wasn't the toughest guy in the world. I didn't want to be a professional fighter, none of that. But I was more prepared than him. And when we started, it was very easy to get a good roundhouse kick off and knock him out, and that's what I did. And I didn't continue. I wasn't vicious. I didn't go down, stomp him and break his teeth and his nose. It was done, and I left. I thought it was over. The next night. The next day after the club, not even at the club, I was gone, and I was home. I think I was watching TV late at night, midnight, maybe later. I mean, it was weird. It was a weird call, but I got the call, and he told me come to the diner.
Oh wow,
that's a little scary. So I said, just come. We got to talk about something. So now, luckily enough, I knew that he already knew about me and Linda, so I know I wasn't getting killed for that, as I had worried for a while. So I went. When we got there, there's a big black limo outside. I saw Greg, and I saw Scappy's car, because Scappy he's the only top mob guy that drove a Chevy.
Everyone drove Cadillacs.
Drove a 2-tone Chevy, but it was a new car, nice car, probably an 81, 82, whatever it was, 2-toned. But it was a Chevy Impala. I mean, really. So I said, what the hell's going on? And in the leaning on the limo was Sammy, the bull.
Sammy the bull.
He was probably a skipper at the time. I don't even know if he was yet, but he's definitely maybe a skipper. If he was there with Paul, you would think he was a skipper.
Yeah.
I go in, and I see Scappy sitting down with who I didn't even know at first, and Greg is sitting at the counter. So he comes over and tells me, as I was walking in, what'd you do last night? What'd you do? I said, what'd I do? I went out with the guys. There's nothing. He says, well, you got a beef? And then it hit me. I says, yeah, I got in a fight with a guy. Was I supposed to do? He says, it was Paulie's nephew.
Oh, wow.
So I still don't realize this. Is Paul Castellano. Now I know the name. And I said, what was I supposed to do? So we go to the table, and then a little bit goes back and forth. Paul wants the satisfaction. He's a little threatening, But Scappy, I think, was the acting boss at the time. That's why he was able to sit, or one of the 3-man panel when Junior first went away. and again, I was a kid, so I wouldn't really know all of that, but I know he was one of the top three, maybe the acting boss. But he was sitting down, and he's trying to iron it out. And I'm saying to myself, there's barroom fights every day. I mean, what is the big deal? I can't, and I say that out loud. But at the end of it, he starts getting a little too much, and Greg jumped in. And Greg said something like, if the hair's harmed on his head, you'll see more bodies in the street. Scappy stopped him because that was a little out of line, and he could have gotten himself.
To the boss of the family.
Let me handle this. So Greg took me back to the counter, and Scappy finished, and then I got called back to the seat. I sat down, and Paul got to tell me, you got that man, pointing to Scappy, to thank for your life right now. Wow. So it was a lesson I learned. Mm-hmm. It's now I owed Scappy my life. I owed him. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a 21-year-old kid getting in a beef in a bar, and now I owe him. You know, you did me this big favor. You're saving me. Did I really deserve to be killed?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think Sammy even said to beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, no. So now when I went outside to leave, Sammy told me, you should have killed the cocksucker. He didn't like the kid. So he probably knew he was a half a wannabe or whatever. So, so that story for some reason has got a lot of publicity lately. But it really was like, you know, how many of us growing up in Brooklyn never got in a barroom fight or something? Exactly. You know,
Brooklyn was the breeding ground.
There's probably in my whole, I've gone out to nightclubs probably, I don't know, 2,000 times from when I was 17 until I was 25. And I think we had maybe a half a dozen real beefs like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. So now, obviously, even today, your name with Greg's name is still very respected. Even though Greg, he was a rat, and everyone found that out later. You know, the Colombo Wars happened. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can tell Persico Arena side, and your part in it. Maybe talk about that.
Well, you know, Vic Arena was really not a well-known, well-feared, well-respected mob guy. He was a good fellow, and he was a big earner. Mm-hmm. He was a relative of Carmine. I want to say a cousin, or married into something. I don't know for sure. And a lot of people say, well, how could you not know? Well, I'm not a mob groupie. I'm not a historian. I mean, there's 1,500 guys associated with the Colombo family. I don't know every single one of them. It's like, my example is, if you work for Amazon.
Yeah, you don't know any.
You're friends with every Amazon worker?
No, of course not.
You know, but if you go to Chicago and you go to the Amazon place and they know you're an Amazon worker, they'll take care of you. You know, oh, good, yeah, let's go to lunch. Yeah, but it's the same thing. You don't know everybody. So I never knew Vic Arena. I never even heard of him. Yep. But I found out, I heard that that's the guy that Junior, when he got his 130-something years, put him to be the acting boss. Okay, fine. Greg said, he's okay. I said, we'll be okay. It's not going to affect us in any way. But it started affecting us when we saw what he was doing. He was starting to pull, and not only me. Greg said it. He said it to me and our guys, some other guys close to us. He was bringing the power out to Long Island. He made Carmine Cesar a captain, had to move out to Long Island where he lived. You know, he straightened out guys and made guys that were close to him. He wasn't making any Persico guys. I was proposed at 25 years old by Greg.
You got straightened out in New Jersey, didn't you?
Yeah. I get that.
You got your butt in New Jersey.
A hotel right across the street from the Meadowlands. So what happened was, at 25, I was proposed along with another guy in our crew named Joe. And then eventually Jimmy got added to that list maybe a year later, when he was about 26. Mm-hmm. Now Carmine moves up to Consigliere, and Greg sends for him. I mean, Carmine still respected Greg, so he called. He said, I had to see. I can't say sent for him like he ordered him to come in. But he said, how come my guys aren't getting brought in? And he needed that because he was going to possibly die of AIDS. Greg Jr. had 20 years to go. So he needed some trusted people to keep his little empire going. And who better than me and my best friend Jimmy and Joe, who he trusted too. Until the war, he lost a little faith in Joe. So now we see what's happening. It's divide and conquer. Then he starts making moves. He actually has Jimmy Angelina, the consigliere, go see all the captains and see if they can pull them over to his side. Can't happen because the only way to get rid of a boss is to vote him out unanimously. That means every skipper has to vote him out.
Okay.
Junior's son's not going to vote him out. Junior's nephews aren't going to vote him out. His best childhood friends aren't going to, there's maybe 4 or 5 skippers that may go against him, or 10, and there's always going to be 10 on his side. That's not happening. Or he steps down himself, or he dies. Okay, Junior, none of those things happened with Junior. So he was the boss. And Vic didn't like, he wanted to take it over. So anyway, he has Jimmy poll the captains. When it doesn't work, he has to kill Jimmy now. Because it gets back to Junior that Jimmy was going to see the captains.
Wow. And that doesn't happen normally. Consiglieres don't get killed.
No. That's very rare. It's disgusting. If you know our life, it's disgusting. So he goes to Vic sends a message to Junior Persico in jail telling him that he had to do it because he was trying to take over the family.
Okay.
Meanwhile, he was trying to take over the family.
Yes.
So now he elevates Carmine Sessa, knowing he's under Greg all those years and figuring that's a good ally to have. And he's right.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
But now he asks him to go see the captains and do the same thing. When he comes to Greg really busts out laughing, literally. He says he'll do the same thing to you. He said, you think you're going to get those Russos and all these other loyalists come over? They're wrong. He said, they're not going to come over anyway. So now Carmine makes mistake number 2, and a very big mistake. He goes and tries to kill Carmine. He brings a crew that is not up to the task, to say the least. That when they spotted Vic, when Vic spotted them, they ran. You guys got 3 or 4 guys in a car with guns. He sees you and you run. First of all, what's the difference if he sees you? I mean, most of the guys we did during the war, they saw us.
Yeah.
They knew it was coming. I mean, they didn't look at me and say, "Oh my God, he saw me." It's still, I don't understand that. It's the worst excuse I've ever heard.
Yeah, because you say I want to talk to him.
Well, Greg Jr. said, I never thought about that because I just thought I knew Greg would go up and shoot him. We're not going to fucking run because we saw him.
No, of course not.
But Greg Jr. said that, and he's 100% right. All you had to do was say, "Hey, Vic, I got to talk to you for a minute. Something's up."
100% correct.
You're his counselor,
yeah.
So anyway, now it caused a split, and it juggernauted into a full all-out war. I'll spare the details of that. A lot went on in the next month or two. But then, they thought we were in the middle, and then there were some meetings where they finally found out which side we were on, and then they tried to kill Greg. Carmine still held us back. He says, "Let's negotiate. We could get this thing put together." Then they killed Hank the Bank, one of our guys. They shot at another guy. And then I told Greg in front of Carmine, because I lived right there in Brooklyn. I had my business, my family. I says, I don't like looking over my shoulder. I mean, we're going to get hit. I said, if we don't answer back, and this is my first time really coming out and promoting this type of life. I said, if we don't answer them, they're going to think we're just running.
Yeah.
Greg said he's right. It's open season, Carmine. It's open season. So we went out, and then the damage we did in the next 3 to 4 months was probably never seen in the mob.
Now you almost got shot, correct? You were wearing a bulletproof vest.
Yeah. Well, there was a few shootouts where bullets were going both ways, but the one where they tried to get me was where I left my house, and when I drove down the block, I immediately saw a car that we targeted. It was a guy named Chicky, his car. So he was right behind us, right behind me. I didn't have my vest on that day because I was going to Manhattan for a meeting outside of anything. I didn't know he's going to even know I was going there. And I only had a little 38 on me.
Wow.
So as I'm going to the corner, I see him. Instead of making a left that I usually do to go to Greg's house, that's what they thought I was going to do. I made a right. Then I seen the van make a quick U-turn. There was a van waiting to block that street.
Okay.
I go the other way. Now they're both behind me. We go down 19th Avenue all the way to the end, about 51st Street. I make a right. It leads into Avenue I, right where Flea Market used to be.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I wind up but as I'm at the stop sign, I see a school bus coming. So I time it where I can get in front of the school bus, and they would have to wait for the school bus to go by. They didn't wait. They came out too. This school bus had to stop. So now I said, I pull into a gas station. I throw my car door open because I'm not going to be a sitting duck. I reach over the door like this, and I hold a gun at them. I made a joke about it. It's like a TJ Hooker move. I had the gun out. And
Starsky and Hutch.
And they stopped because nobody wants to get shot. One bullet. So they stopped. And they left. So now I parked the car real quick. I ran up the train station, and I see them a block away. They were all out of the cars talking, like pointing and stuff. Now they come back. And I jump going back and forth on the L. So on one side looking at them come back. So I go back to the other side, and I'm watching them all around my car. Like now they're looking like, where is he? And then they start looking around like, is he behind us? They didn't know where I was. So then they left. So it wasn't like, if I had made the turn, who knows? But since I could, and if they would have jumped out and started shooting out with me, I probably would have won. I would have shot a few and ran. I was in good shape. I would have just, I had a plan in my head, but who knows? But
But you guys were really the shooters. You guys were really shooters. Like the other crews, they said they were shooters, but they didn't really shoot. Your crew was pretty tough.
If you're around Greg, there's nothing but a shooter. He don't want you around not capable of doing what you're supposed to do. On our side, honestly, I'm really a little embarrassed about the rest of our side. And on the other side, there was some Wild Bill's crew was definitely
Wild Bill crew. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. On our list, and we figured if we could get some of those guys out of the way. There's another guy. I hate to bring his name up. He's heavyweight. He just got home. We got in shootouts with him, and every time he shot back full steam with 16 bullets out of his Glock. He was no slouch. He did get hurt, but he did his time. I think he's home, and for some reason, Greg had him high on the list. He didn't trust him. He didn't like him. He didn't, I didn't, from what I knew of him, I don't know why. Our friend Bobby Zam got real close with this fella. Yeah. But,
famous one is Nicky Black. That's the very famous one everyone talks about. Obviously, you did that one, everything. Yeah. He thought you guys were cops, actually. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, that's what we think because, first of all, he threatened to kill me and Jimmy if we didn't come over his.
Your Uncle Albert.
Yeah, he told my Uncle Albert that. And plus, Carmine also had somebody in the club that he heard it from. Somebody in his club told Carmine. So we heard it from two different people. And with that, we made him our number one target. So we were going to hang out on Avenue a lot, be in that area. But his luck had it. I think it was a day or two the most. I think it was the next day. That we were on Avenue. But like I said, no more than 2 days later. And we spotted him. And we had what we thought was a cop siren, but it was blue. It came from a volunteer fire department in Jersey.
Okay.
So we had our scanner in the window that looked like a radio.
Yep.
I think we had coffee cups and things like that. It looked like, we probably were having coffee and doing some surveillance, but it wasn't like that. And we spotted him. We made our move. And, what made that historic is, a lot of these early ones, there were several shooters. This one fellow I was talking about a little earlier on, we missed because Greg insisted that he do it. And there's no excuse. I was not prepared in the back. I had a little pistol in my hand, and his tech backfired. So then I took out the first time I ever used an automatic, and I got one shot off, which saved our lives because that made the guy duck.
Oh, wow.
And now he was shooting his Glock back at us, like 16 shots. I had to tell Jimmy, go, because I couldn't,
Yeah, you can do anything.
So, but this one, I was ready. thank God, because Greg had the same rifle, and he hit the button, but he didn't hit the safety. He hit the clip. So I heard the bullets come out. We heard him, but I was already reaching out the window, and and I got, so close. If I was blind, I would have missed, But the thing is, he was in the car like this, and he never turned. We were always looking in mirrors, watching cars pull up.
Sure.
We weren't, anybody, everybody. Greg, you got that mirror, you got that. I'm looking out back. If a car pulled up on us, we were ready for him.
Wow.
But he must have got stiff where he told his nephew Joe, I think they're rolling up on us now. I think it's the law or something. Something like that. Because he never turned.
Turned.
He just,
how you don't turn in a war. You gotta look,
Yeah. And
crazy.
he should have really said the things he said. It's bad enough we're at war. You're gonna make it personal and target somebody because we're not coming to your side. Just go about your business. We didn't send out messages to anybody. They knew anybody that was actively and sometimes not even active. Greg got to the point where anybody that even knew them had to go. But Jimmy and I were a little more level-headed. We didn't really want to go that route. So, we
wanted to ask. I wanted to ask you about Greg. If he was alive today, Greg Senior, if he was alive today, would you be able to sit down with him and forgive him for what he did, bringing you into life?
Well, that part, I can't blame him. I got to blame myself. Okay. But for lying to us and misleading us, not just me, his own son and
Greg Jr.
making us believe that he was, it's such a fine line, because even though he did have the carte blanche to do it, he did some really serious, ballsy things, hits that nobody else would do, in broad daylight. You still could get caught by a local cop. You still can get caught by the DEA, if they're surveilling something else, just because you had the FBI, So it's so as far as life, I don't blame him. So there's no forgiveness necessary. I blame myself for making that stupid decision at a young age. And then once I was in the life, I really have no choice anymore. And then when the war started, now I became a gangster. I was as much a gangster as anybody. I had as big a balls as anybody, because I was as big a target as anybody. And probably bigger because I was Greg's right-hand man. So there was no other course of action for me. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I could have never lived with myself. As stupid as that sounds. But, again, at that moment in time, that's how I felt. But to give him for making me what I was once I got in, and emulating him and following his footsteps and being the consummate wise guy like he was supposed to be, I don't think I could forgive that. If he'd have told me, which is very hairy, if he would have told me the way to survive this life, you need a friend, or you're going to do life or whatever. I have somebody soft-coded telling me I have an agent, or I have somebody that is my crystal ball that helps me, keeps me ahead of the game. Doesn't, I don't know. That's hard to say.
That's a tough question. It works both ways.
He would have to be so certain that I wouldn't tell Jimmy, and that Jimmy wouldn't tell his next somebody that he trusted and loved. So that can spread, and then it's not a good thing. So it's hard to say that, but that's a great question. The life itself, I don't have animosity, because there are parts of it I like, there's parts of it I miss. Once I got in deep enough, it's like quicksand. There's really no getting out. You got to just, now you have to acclimate and learn and survive. And then I said the war. There's 3 different stages. Once the war started, even the guy like Terry Winter, who I mentioned, wrote the script.
Wrote the script, Soprano, everything.
Well, he wrote the script for the life now. We have a pilot. And it's fantastic. Armand Desante loved it. Another actor, Craig DeFrancis, said it's one of the best script he ever read. So eventually, I think, but he's working right now on the Tulsa King. with Stallone.
Oh, what's
So
Stallone?
it's
Okay.
sort of on hold. But you never know. Maybe Stallone will get on board with us. He wanted to do something with that whole situation with Greg. There's other guys he could play too, like Sonny Francese. An old time stoic guy like that. But anyway, so
I know you
Terry,
missed 10 years. You went to jail for 10 years. Right?
Yeah. No,
what are you saying?
This one thing about Terry. He said when he was interviewing me, it was very easy for him to see the two Larrys. When I talked about my old life as a kid, my family, things like that, coaching kids and sports. He says, you just like just a good regular guy. He says, when we got towards the life and the war, and he says, you're a different person. He said, I forget what word he used, tenacity. I see the tenacity in you, tenacity. Yeah. And now when I look back and even, I understand that, again, it's a moment in time. I was there. Yeah. There was no other course of action. Once you're in that deep, there's no other course of action. What am I going to do? Call the cops and tell them I want to get out of this or run away? And then after the war's over, come back like I deserve the business I built?
Wow. I was going to mention you did 10 years.
Yes.
And I know you had a son. You obviously missed 10 years of his life. And I'm sure sometimes it was tough. But if he looks back at you now today, I mean, he should be proud of what you've done. I mean, you're going to have a movie script about your life. You got a lot of things going on. I mean, you are changed it completely around and a very positive person.
I appreciate that. I always said it. I've been blessed since I came home.
Yep.
My family's still together. I do have a new wife,
Kelly, years, right? Kelly?
Yes. 10 years, is a long time, and life changes and life moves on. But our kid is still our kid. And we, he's still in my life. And we do a lot together. I had him in martial arts. He's got 2 different systems, black belt, but he's a good kid. He's not a fighter. He doesn't want to do that, but he got really good. He got really good. He had 2 different, I had him with 2 different professionals. And, I took him up to a certain level. Then he had a fight, and he was with one guy named Donnie Hare, who was a fantastic champion in Florida. Don Dragon Wilson was in his life. Dan Webster, great martial artist, and a lot of contact. He's not in one of these schools where you just go dancing. Dan Webster makes you fight, makes you hit, a lot of contact. So I'm proud of him for that. And he's a school teacher now. He teaches English. He wants to be an English professor at a college level. So he's doing good. We have a great relationship, and everything's good. My gym does well. I have, like you said, the Inside Straight. The reason I got
Inside Straight. Now you do that with Kelly. You do that with Kelly. You and Kelly do that.
Yeah, we do a podcast together. We do the podcast together. The website is InsideStraight.com, and what it is, it's what you see on TV now in the sports industry. People discussing the odds, winners and losers. I've been doing that since I'm 15. I'm somewhat of an expert on it, and it's legal for the most part. It is legal in most states. Yeah. So I said I could come out of the shadows. I don't have to do it in the basement anymore. I could talk about this stuff. ESPN does it. Colin Coward does it. Christopher Russo does it. Stephen A. All the Mike and Mike. They're always talking about sports and gambling and things like that, weather and injuries. So I do that, and I try to help them, guide them. And I'm still privy to some top syndicates, professional gamblers around that I've dealt with since I'm a kid, that I still get their information. You got to know where to go to get it. I do. Not everybody know that. So now I put a website out, like I said, and we do the podcast every Wednesday night. I do every Wednesday afternoon. It's live. There's very minimal editing, if any. And it comes out on a Wednesday night, and it gives you the whole weekend. But yeah,
what's your football team, by the way? What football team you like?
It's hard. It's hard when you are around gambling and you like to wager and you like to, and I tell you, so many places to wager legitimately. I can say that now. It's hard, but I will answer that for you. I've been in the bookmaking business my whole life, so I typically root for a person that's been like. If you remember, I don't know how old you are, but remember John Elway?
Of course, Denver Broncos quarterback.
Oh, I felt bad for him. He was around so many years. He kept losing Super Bowls. Then all of a sudden, he won 2 in a row. I was rooting for him. Yeah. I always rooted for Dan Marino. different guys along the way, and I'm typically an underdog guy. I'll go for the underdog. I look for value. It's easy to say, and I talk about this on the show. Guys will argue with me. How could you bet against Patrick Mahomes? I said, of course, I know he's the best quarterback in the game, but I'm not going to get any value there. I'm going to be laying all kinds of points. I want to find the spot where I can beat him. For my same $100, get 300 back, or 1,000, get 3,000 back. So those are the things I've learned over the years. It comes down to value. It's for the fans to argue over who the best is. I don't really care.
I'm a big Jets fan. What do you think of the Jets?
I've got them. I got them in my Super Bowl box.
Oh, okay.
Here's the teams I got. I started with the Jets in Baltimore to play either Detroit or Green Bay.
Okay.
Any combination of those, but I just added Buffalo.
Okay, Buffalo looks tough.
The reason is he's proven me wrong. I love Josh Allen.
He's a great quarterback.
On a five, Mahomes is the 5. He's on a scale of 1 to 5, and he's proven it. He wins Super Bowls. Allen is right there, but I think he's matured enough. It looks like and he's got something to prove because he's been close a few times. His window's going to close with that team. I love him. I think he's a hard-nosed football player. He runs. He don't duck. He don't hide. He don't slide. And he's got a gun for him.
He does.
His own way better than Mahomes, but he can't. But Mahomes has that way of getting away from trouble and throwing an underhand pass to Kelsey and getting away with it. Not too many quarterbacks can do that. But
Rodgers, if Rodgers,
the Jets in there, and again, it's value. I don't think the Jets are clear cut the best by no means, but under the right circumstances. And look, Kansas City is 3-0.
3-0, yep.
They could easily be 1-2 or 0-3.
Correct.
They beat Baltimore by a toe. The next game, if it wasn't for that disgusting call that was not even close to passing the camera,
that's true.
They lose to Cincy. And then I fell asleep, but somebody said the game they could have lost to Atlanta too.
They could have, yes.
The other night. Last night. Or whatever it was. Was it last night?
I think
no, Sunday. Sunday night. In a Sunday night game. So they could, but the fans will say, yeah, but Mahomes finds a way to win. Yeah, well, he gets a little help. As great as he is, the NFL loves him being there, and now they got Taylor Swift, and all this publicity. So you know how it is. Some of that stuff matters, believe it or not. It shouldn't, but it does.
I'm surprised the Bengals are 0-3.
I was talking about that today. I'm going to talk about it on my podcast tomorrow, so you'll get the first exclusive. I sense that Joe Burrows doesn't care like he used to.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I remember him in his first 2 years when something didn't go right. He'd go off to the sideline pissed like Tom Brady. He'd be yelling at his team. He'd be riling them up. He wasn't happy. Now he walks off the field. He's got that blonde hair now. He put the sun in. He just seems to be a different guy. I don't see him. But if you looked at that other kid on Washington last night, he wanted to prove something to Burrow.
Daniels.
I'm the best. I'm the best guy to come out of LSU, not you. And
that guy looked good. He looked good.
That whole team, I can't believe the speed I saw in Washington. They were like the Rams from 2000, greatest show on turf. I mean, I couldn't believe the speed. So they shocked me. But the other game we had right. We fought the wise guys hit Buffalo early, and then when the line went up to 6.5, some other outfits took it back. So it sort of made me keep the play real small. But we had it right to open up. The second game, we didn't have a play, but believe it or not, people were jumping on people were jumping on Washington. And I just didn't get it. I didn't get what I was looking at. I just didn't get it. I said, I don't know. But they knew something I didn't know. You know? The pros were out there. I spent 3 days at least working on the college games. The pros are very difficult because from one week to the other, there's too many variables. Travel and who cares and who doesn't care. But the college, you can get a true read, and you just have to know who, if they came off a big win or loss and who they play the next week. Like last week, Alabama and Georgia. especially Georgia. They had a tough game with Kentucky. They could kill Kentucky.
Yeah,
but
they can.
They were looking forward to Alabama. They're
Yeah,
playing Alabama.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
You know, and that happened. You got to know that. You can't just look at the newspaper and say, "Oh, they'll kill Kentucky."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's easy to say, but you know, when you put your money where your mouth is, you got to know why. Anyway, so I do a lot of that. We talk about a lot of that on Wednesday night.
Okay.
And I know we're running out of time, so I want to say this.
Yeah.
Let's do part 2 because we've got a lot.
Absolutely.
We got a lot to cover.
We do have a lot to cover, so we'll do part 2.
Yeah,
and I'm going to respect your time. Again, Inside Straight with Larry Mazza is on YouTube Wednesdays, right? Tomorrow,
yes.
You drop
Wednesday night. Yeah, it gets put on Wednesday, and it just stays so you can see all 4 episodes right now if you want. They're still up there. But the latest one will come out tomorrow. Yes.
Yes. I'll leave the link in this when it goes up on YouTube. You'll see the link in the description. You'll see everything to Larry's website and the link below. Like and subscribe to Larry Inside Straight with Larry Mazza with his wife Kelly, beautiful wife Kelly. We're gonna do part 2.
Yeah,
part
for
2.
Sure. Because like I said,
2.
we sort of bounced around. We covered a lot of stuff, but we could get into more things about the war, how it ended, when we all wound up in prison, and why guys made decisions they made. And there's a lot. So listen. I've been on probably a half a dozen times, and
you've been on everything. You've been on John's show, everything. John's a good buddy of mine.
Yes.
I appreciate it, Larry. I want to respect your time. Thank you, brother.
You got it. Have a great one.
Thank
you. Take care.